What's up, everybody? It's us again, double trouble this week. You're getting a double dose of us here at Ron's Reactions. This week, today we're doing kind of part one in a new series where we're going over with a Devy focus as opposed to a Dynasty focus. I am here with my co-host Holler. What's up?
What's up? I'm stoked to do this. I'm a big fan of Devy. I feel like I love watching college football. There's a lot of times that Saturdays are busy, so I don't always watch it. But I really like when I started doing Devy, I really like watching college football, and then this Devy really gives it another twist, like really focusing on different players. So it's fun.
For sure. Like I actually started as more of a college football fan and then kind of
Yeah,
migrated to the NFL later. So Devy kind of helps bridge the gap there for me.
yeah, 100%.
All right. So the idea of this exercise really is to not focus on like the top well-known players at each position, whereas we're going to try to hit some of the players that maybe you don't know as well. So with that being said, we're going to start with the quarterbacks here, and we're going to skip over Caleb Williams and Drake May. Caleb Williams plays at USC. He's kind of a projected top 5 pick. Drake May is pretty much the consensus quarterback 2. He plays for North Carolina. And with that, those are kind of the well-known guys. I'm going to let Holler introduce you to our next guy here.
Yeah, so who I picked, my first one was Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. He'll be coming out in 24, so he'll be in that same class with Williams, May, a couple other guys. And I think after Williams and May, it's just kind of like a crapshoot right now. So it's really fun. It'll be really fun to see how it comes out next year. So with Michael Penix, like he's got a big, huge arm. He's 6'3", 215. So kind of one thing I was looking over some videos and stuff, and I think one thing is he could definitely put on some pounds a little bit. He's your typical NFL QB, so I think he'll slide in really well. And then a couple other things I found out is he takes care of the football really well. He has like rarely even fumbled the ball, so I think that's something that in the NFL they're going to really like that. And then he progresses really quick. Like through his progressions, they're super quick, and then he loves to just spray the ball all over the field, which is really fun to watch. That Washington offense is super fun. They have some really good wide receivers that are coming out as well. Rome, and then Jalen McMillan, and then you know, there's a big, huge red flag with him. It kind of reminds me of Hendon Hooker. Like he's going to be, when he comes out, he'll be 24 years old. So he's going to be a little bit older. He's jumped around a lot. And he honestly, when I looked this up, I was super surprised. He's only been healthy for one full season over the last 5 years. Right. So that is insane to me. And when I was looking it up, a lot of it is like, there's nothing like continuous. It's just like unlucky. So it's really interesting to see how this next year plays out. And I think he can climb up the board a little bit and I obviously it's going to depend on how things shake out, but I think he'll be going in that first round if he puts together a good year.
For sure. I like Penix Jr. a lot too, and hopefully he can stay healthy and put together a
Yeah.
good year. The other guy that I wanted to touch on from the 24 class, he's kind of between Penix and this guy. They're kind of go back and forth as who the QB3 in the class is going to be, and it's Quinn Ewers out of Texas. He got off to kind of a weird start, right, where his recruiting was kind of all over, and then he reclassified his class when he came out and ultimately settled in at Texas. He was kind of the hotness before Arch Manning got there, and now Arch Manning's kind of putting a damper on some of the Quinn Ewers hype a little bit. Ewers is still projected to be the QB1 there. He was like the top recruit in his class coming out of college. He's shown flashes at times at Texas. He got the start last year, but then he got injured, and so he hasn't been able to put it together for a full season. He's had like really good stretches of games, and then just just god awful stretches of games
Yeah.
too. So you really want to see if he can put everything together there. He has really good arm strength. He's not very mobile, which does limit his upside a little bit, but I think the arm talent is good enough that it kind of helps balance that out. So hopefully we'll see if he can put things together and take that next step, and hopefully be a first round draft pick next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically Penix and yours, like they're gonna need to put it together this year to really, show like that they'll be, top round, the first round.
They're projects that need to kind of complete the assignment before they get the first round draft
Yeah.
capital.
They have good. Both offenses should be good. I
For
mean,
sure.
they have Texas has. I have. Texas has a couple wide receivers, a good tight end. So that they should be able to put it together. So I think it's on yours.
For sure. There's plenty of talent there. Expectations are high for both offenses.
Absolutely.
Who's your next guy?
So my next guy is 25. We haven't seen that much of him. Cade Klubnik. He came in for DJ. I'm gonna butcher this, but ukulele.
DJU.
Yeah, DJU. And DJU, he was somebody that was like super high coming out of high school. Like they had big hopes for him at Clemson. So for me, Cade is somebody that I think I'm really going to be watching this year, because if you're in a deep Devy league, he's probably already off the board. But if you're in a Devy league that like only does 24 or 1 year at a time, he's somebody that you really want to watch this year, because that 25 class is kind of still up in the air for QBs. They're obviously still got 2 more years, but I think when Cade was in last year, he had a couple good games. There are some downsides with him. Unfortunately, he is a little bit of smaller, only 6'2", 195. But honestly, he needs to develop his pocket presence. But honestly, he's a really confident QB, and he has that rushing upside. And so that's, I think, what is going to help him. But obviously, he's still young. He's only played, I think it was like 3 games last year. And unfortunately, he had I think only 2 touchdowns, and I think it was 4 interceptions. So you don't like to see that. But I think when he puts he's there for a whole season, we'll be able to see what he's made of.
For sure. I like Klubnik quite a bit. And you mentioned the touchdowns to interception ratio. That stat's a little bit skewed because he came in the Notre Dame game. Actually, he replaced DJU kind of coming off the bench, and he threw 2 in that game, where he got kind of thrown into the fire and didn't against a really good defense that kind of picked him apart a little bit. But
yeah, and I think that's kind of where that pocket
learn.
presence is. Like I was watching, like before putting some notes in, like I was watching some videos of him, and it just like only 3 games. Like I don't think he was ever thinking he was going to come in and be the starter. So I think, for what he did, I think he did well. And I think he, will continue to progress.
For sure. He'll learn and he'll get better.
Yeah.
The next guy that I wanted to talk about, he's also coming out in the 2025 class. He's went to Penn State. He was the 2022 recruiting class, like top rated quarterback by 24/7 Sports. He got a perfect 5-star rating. He got 100 rating out of 100, which is pretty crazy. It's Drew
That's
Aller.
impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. The expectations are sky high for this kid.
Yeah.
He's 6'5", 243, like just built like a truck. And he's got a huge cannon of an arm. He's got a quick release, makes really good decisions. He's deceptively athletic for how big he is. Really, we didn't get to see him a lot last year. He came up in some mop-up duty, and he was fine. This year, he projects to be the QB1 at Penn State. We'll get to see how he does against some good competition. I think they play Ohio State and Michigan this year, so he's going to get kind of a baptism by fire. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah, I think both of those guys they're going to play some good competition. And I think that 25 class, those quarterbacks, I think there's more of them in 25 that are going to be like there'll be more of them than in 24, because I think we got the top 2 guys in 24, and then 25. Like obviously there's still time, but I feel like there's more of them.
For sure, it's hard to know. I mean, we're talking like 2 years out. Like these guys, they were their true freshman season the last year, so we'll learn a lot this fall about what these guys have.
100%.
Let's move on to running backs. So, like we mentioned, we're going to skip some of the top guys. Travion Henderson out of Ohio State and Raheem Sanders out of Arkansas are kind of the consensus top 2 running backs in the 2024 class. They're awesome. They should be pretty locked and loaded, good draft capital. Holler, I'll let you kick us off with your first guy here.
I tried to stay away from the top guys, but I think Braylon Allen, I think he could shock some people. He's coming out in 24. He goes to Wisconsin. The last 2 years, he's put together back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons. And last year, he had 11 touchdowns. So he's 6'2", 240. He is just a big, big back, right? And, Wisconsin always puts together really good running backs. Jonathan Taylor. I think Melvin Gordon went there. And so I just think he's going to be a lot of the same as those guys were. And I think if he puts together another really good year with 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, 10 to 12 touchdowns, I think if Travion Henderson or Raheem Sanders slip up at all, I think he could be the first running back off the board. I think that would shock some people. So he will have to have a huge season, but that's somebody that I feel really confident in. If I get him in a Devy league, I feel super confident. It doesn't matter if he's going to go first, second, or third. I feel confident where he goes. He's going to be, I know that the NFL now has like two backs, but he's going to be your 3-down back, and then they're going to have a secondary back that will come in and, be the pass catcher and things like that. He does an okay job at pass catching as well. And he kind of is almost like the whole package, I think. But really what I like about him is just he's a big, tough runner.
Yeah, he's big. So he played linebacker in high school, and he switched him to
Oh,
running
that's
back when
cool.
he got to Wisconsin. So that's why you can kind of see he runs that way too. He runs angry. He's physical.
Yeah.
He uses
And
his size really well.
And one thing with the way they run like that, though, there's always a health concern.
Sure.
But what's cool to see is that he even though he's been on the field, he put together 2 seasons in a row of 1,200 yards. There's that health concern, but he stays on the field. So I think, to me, there's not much to worry about. I think he's going to put together another good season, and we'll just see how it plays out and see where he goes.
For sure. Speaking of guys who stay on the field, Quinshon Judkins out of Ole Miss. He's in the 2025 class. He took Zach Evans off the field because he was just so
Yep.
good last year for Lane Kiffin down in Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
He put up over 1,600 total yards and 17 touchdowns as a true freshman in the SEC. That's just
Impressive.
mind blowing. It's crazy that's his baseline. Hopefully that wasn't the peak of his collegiate career, and he can continue to grow on those numbers and doesn't kind of flame out. The one area where I think he did struggle, though, he really wasn't involved in the passing game. He had less than like a 5% target share in the offense. And granted, a lot of freshmen don't they start just getting carries and then they work into the receiving game as they go. So that's one thing I'm looking for this year is can he start to get some of those targets get worked in? Because if he can do that, he's going to be a true 3-down threat in the NFL when he finally gets to come out in a couple of years.
Yep. Kind of like a Braylon Allen as well. I think obviously he's not quite as they're both pretty big. So I think they're pretty similar.
For sure. Who's your next guy here?
My next guy, he's a little bit lower on rankings, but after seeing you told me about him a little bit and I looked into him more, Devin Neal from Kansas coming out in 24. He's kind of like your day 3 or 4 back. He's not going to be somebody that's coming off the board early. But he's going to be like a really, really good pass catching back. I think he'll need to have a really good season though to continue to develop and get looks. But he's going to go into the NFL, and so I think he's going to be a good, a serviceable player. I don't know if he's going to be like your fantasy star, but I do think he can be somebody that will be could be a flex position player. So some things, he's 5'11", 210. And to me, thinking of him, he's just a pass catching back. He can be put out in the slot. He can, he really excels in the screen game is what I was looking up and I found. What I put down is that he could be like a really good complementary back. One thing that he lacks though, is that home run speed. So you're not going to see him, kill the defense. But he's going to be like I don't know what's a good comp, maybe like a Jared McKinnon, how he just catches balls, and it will depend mostly with the type of player like him. He's going to depend on where he goes, right, for him to excel in the fantasy world. But I think, it's going to be fun to watch him, I think, for sure, because I would like to see him get more involved a little bit in the run game. He's obviously being used there, but see more of his run game develop versus because he's a good pass catcher. So I just want to see more of that running develop.
For sure. I think he's definitely going to be kind of a 1B to an NFL's running back
Yeah.
1A.
Yep.
But I mean, we've seen there's value in that, right? And it's kind of
Yep.
weird. Like I like Devin Neal. Like you kind of look at his profile and you're like, Kansas, what the heck? And
Yeah. It's
because
weird.
that's not really like a power school in
Yeah.
college football, but
And a
he's
couple.
legit. So
Yeah, he is. Like the last 2 years he's led the rushing in led the rushing back, and then he's played 24 out of the possible 25 games, right? So he stays on the field, and that's pretty impressive for a running back. So I just think that's he's going to be a really good serviceable player.
awesome. This next guy here, Trey Benson, running back for Florida State. He's eligible to come out in 2024. One of my favorite running backs. I hadn't even heard of this guy until probably like 2 months ago, where I think
Yeah,
it was Ray GQ and some other Devy guys were hyping this guy up on Twitter. I was like, who the heck is this dude? He's got great size, strength, and speed. He's 6'1", 221. He runs like the quickness of a small back, but he has the power of a big bruiser. He's when he got passing work at Florida State, he was really effective with it. Like you can see some of the cuts he makes are just nasty. Honestly, he would be kind of my dark horse to be the running back one of this next class if it's not Raheem Sanders or Travion Henderson. Like he is so good. Like this kid is going to be special. I think that Florida State offense is going to be really good this year. They have some awesome pieces, and I think he's going to be a feature aspect of that. I do just want to see him get a higher like market share of the rushing yards and carries on the team.
yeah,
He wasn't used like the workhorse running back that I hope he can be, and he also wasn't used in the passing game as much as I would hope. Like he's really good at both those things, so I really hope that this year he takes that next step forward and he can be honestly he could potentially end up being the first running back off the board next year.
yeah. And what I like about this 24 class with the running backs is like all four of those guys. We didn't really touch on Travion or Sanders, but like all four of those guys, Benson, Braylon Allen, Raheem Sanders, Travion Henderson, it's going to really depend on how they do this year, right? And it will also depend like how the draft shakes out, of course. But I just think any of those four guys could go first. There's not a top guy that is way ahead of the other ones. So and to me, like they all bring something a little bit different.
For sure. This running back class, there's a lot of potential there. So hopefully
Yeah.
these guys pan out. I'm sure we're gonna ultimately end up with a couple busts just because that's just the way things work. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of promising prospects here.
Yep.
Speaking of promising prospects, probably one of the best wide receiver prospects to come out of college in a
Oh
long
yeah.
time, Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. His dad's a Hall of Famer. The dude's just a beast. I don't think we need to spend too much time on him. Everyone knows who he is.
No.
He's probably going to be a top 5 pick next year.
Yep.
But
Honestly,
out
I could see people just to digress a little bit, but I could see people taking him like over. I think it might be like Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison in rookie drafts next year. Like I could
yeah,
totally see that. Like because I feel more confident in Marvin Harrison than I do in Drake May. Drake May is going to be good, but I just feel more confident in like we know what Marvin Harrison Jr.
I
is and what is going to be.
I agree 100%. So if you look at my Devy rankings, I have Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. in their own tier, and then Drake Mays
Yeah.
in his own as the number 3 in the class.
Yeah, that's how kind of how I have my rankings out as well.
All right. Well, how about some wide receivers who aren't Marvin Harrison? Who do you got, Holly?
Yeah, it's hard after that. Like, I mean, to me, there's you'll touch on one of them that I like a lot. But one that's kind of running under like not many people know. Like they know who he is, but they don't love him. I think he has to put it together. He's one of those LSU wide receivers. They always come out and they're as long as he's not Keyshawn Butte. But Malik Neighbors, right? I like him a lot. He's got really good acceleration. His hands are good. He's got good speed. And one thing I noticed about him when I was watching and reading up is he creates really good separation, right? Although, unfortunately, he doesn't do it very consistently, right? So I saw on some videos and then I looked at another and I'm like, is this the same guy? So that's one thing I really want to watch this year and see if he can consistently get that separation. And then he's really, really good out in space, right? He can make tacklers miss. So he has that top end speed, and he can really get past the defense as well. And then so last year in 13 games, he had 63 catches for 854 yards, but he only had 2 touchdowns, right? And so I wouldn't really put that too much on him. That LSU offense is, they got the new coach, so we'll see, right? You never know what's going to come about with Brian Kelly, so it's all you never know with him. But so he's something one wide receiver I'm excited to watch. I think I grabbed him a couple times in some of my Devy leagues, and so after Marvin Harrison, I just feel like there's only one other one that I feel confident about. The other ones are just kind of all up in the air. It will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might know who the other wide receiver is,
Yeah.
and it's if you start looking outside of Marvin Harrison, you don't have to look very far to find this guy.
Yep.
Emeka Egbuka, and I apologize if I butcher that name. He's Marvin Harrison Jr.'s teammate at Ohio State. He's also coming out in 2024. He played a lot bigger role this last year with Jackson Smith and Jigba being on the shelf. He was kind of forced to step up, and he did an awesome job. He really, if you look at the wide receiver market share, the target percentage, everything, he did everything just as well as Marvin Harrison Jr., but just scaled back a little bit.
Yeah.
The one thing that's different with Egbuka is he's 6'1", 205. He has a lot more a run after the catch ability. He's really fast. He's not as much as the possession guy like Marvin Harrison is. Egbuka is I want to see him continue to thrive and take a bigger role in the offense, which might be hard outside of Harrison Jr. But that's kind of the other problem too, is he really good enough to be his standalone on his own, or is he just doing so well because he's thriving because defenses are so focused on the other side of the field at Marvin Harrison Jr.
It's kind of like that T. Higgins argument is are we going
Right.
to, I mean, we've seen it a little bit from T. Higgins, but it's I kind of like to use that a little bit. But I just think he's another wide receiver that's coming out of Ohio State. Those guys just push out good wide receivers. So I feel confident of recently how many they've had. I feel confident in all those guys coming out of Ohio State.
Right. They kind of just get a free pass where you're they're going to go in the first round of the draft and they're going to be good, and you just take them.
Yeah, exactly. I think someone like Malik Neighbors, he's going to be like a day 2 or 3. And I think you'll touch on another kind of wide receiver I like, but it will all depend on how it pans out this year. And so that's why I like Devy so much, because it makes me, if I take the players and then also in normal Dynasty, it makes me pay more attention to college football, and then I'm even more invested into how should I move around on my 24 picks and things like that. So I really like this wide receiver class. There's, after Marvin Harrison Jr., there's the jury's out.
There's a bunch of good prospects that they have their warts, right? And they need to put some things together.
Yeah.
All right, who's your next
guy? So I picked a guy from 2025, Barian Brown from Kentucky. Not many people probably know who he is yet because it's Kentucky, right? But he was a 5-star wideout coming out of high school. He put it together a really good freshman season last year, which I was kind of impressed that it was a really good season because he only had 50 catches, right? And so that doesn't sound like a lot, but for a freshman, that's really darn good, especially with Kentucky, because I don't even know who the quarterback is. And so, but he is somebody that I'm looking to, hopefully he'll grab more catches this year. He only played 13 games, I think it was, but he has a really good each catch. He's like a Mike Williams type of guy. He just goes up there and gets it, right? 13 yards per catch. And so I'm hoping he can get into the 65 to 80 range in catches. And he's going to develop well because he's going to be playing against the SEC, right? So I think he's going to be good. He could be one of the top 3 wide receivers that come out of 25. And so he's somebody that I'm really keeping my eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, he plays in the SEC, but you're right. He plays for Kentucky. Yeah. I mean, he was catching passes from Will Levis, but that wasn't, I mean, I don't know.
I was meaning this year.
Oh yeah, that's fair. I don't know who his
Exactly.
quarterback is going to be. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it won't be. We'll see.
Yeah.
The next guy that I have here, you probably haven't necessarily followed him either, unless you live on the West Coast, just because the Pac-12 after dark. Not many people get a chance to watch it. It's Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He's eligible to come out this year. He's 6'3", 178. So just getting that out of the way. He's got like that Devontae Smith type of build. So he's slim. If you're like a BMI truther, this is not the player for you.
Yeah.
But he's productive, man. Like he accounted for 24% of Oregon's receiving yards last year, 30% of their touchdowns. I think the thing that's really going for him is him and Bo Nix together are both trying to raise their draft capital, right? So I think if Bo Nix has a good year, it's because Troy Franklin takes that next step. And same thing with Franklin, right? If he kind of elevates himself to be maybe like an early day 2 pick next year, it's because Bo Nix stepped up his game.
Yep.
Franklin has elite quickness, and he's like a yak monster. You get him out like on these like quick passes and stuff, and he's just dangerous in space. But the big concern, like I mentioned, he's 6'3", 178. Like that makes Devontae Smith look almost like big. So there's a little bit of concern there.
Yeah, he needs to put some pounds on.
For sure. Some healthy weight, hopefully, some good muscle.
Yeah. I like him a lot. He should be, because I'm out in the West Coast, obviously, so I watch some Oregon. Oregon's always fun to watch. Bo Nix is getting a lot better. He was dead in the water, so he had a solid year last year. So that offense is an Oregon offense is always good. So we'll see.
For sure. All right, let's hit up some tight ends and get out of here. So the top guy that you've probably been hearing about for a long time is Brock Bowers out of Georgia. The dude's a monster. He's probably the
like
best tight end
way
prospect
up
we've
here.
seen since Kyle Pitts, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, and hopefully he hits the ground running a little faster than Pitts has. But outside of that, there's not a lot of like, oh, we know who the number 2 tight end is, right? It's just a bunch of guys that, well, maybe they could be good, maybe they won't. But who do you like here?
So I like he is a big boy. Ja'Tavion Sanders, 6'4", 250. In a lot of Devy rankings, he's second behind Brock Bowers. I think a very deep, like he's like Brock Bowers is way up there, then second is way down there. But he's a good pass catcher, right? Soft hands, clean catches. He's your big red zone threat. And he's a chain mover for Texas, right? So I think if Quinn Ewers is going to be better this year, he's going to be leaning a lot on Ja'Tavion Sanders. And so I think that's going to translate pretty well next year or at the next level. And so I think this guy will be able to come out and I think if he puts together a good season, he's not going to be like your first round 1, round 2 kind of guy, but there's not the same tight ends that were this year, right? So Ja'Tavion Sanders, like most of the time, it will depend on where he goes. But to me, I think when he's out there, he makes plays. If he's out in the open field, he just talk about another yak monster. He gets a lot of yards after the catch. So for a guy that's 250, to me, that's pretty impressive. And so I think that's something that can translate pretty well. But one thing he's got to improve on is his speed and his blocking, right? So if you want to be a good tight end in the NFL, you need to block. That's what they're going to be looking for, unless you're some athletic monster. But you're going to need to block. So he's going to need to improve on that. And I think he will be able to. And somebody's going to take a shot on him next year for sure. 6'4", 250. I mean, and if he won't learn how to block at Texas, somebody will grab him and he'll learn in the NFL for sure. And so I think he's going to be pretty darn good.
That's always the hope, right? These guys that can't block, you hope that they can block just well enough to stay on the field.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yep.
My next guy too, he's kind of fits that same kind of build. It's Brian Nesbitt out of North Carolina. He's also eligible to come out in 2024. He's a big body. He's 6'5", 235. He's really athletic for his size. He's a good separator. They use him quite a bit in like screen games and like short passing routes. One of the things I look for when looking for potential breakout tight ends is just, does he have a good quarterback attached to him, or is he going to get good targets? And with Drake May, I feel pretty confident that he's going to have the best chance to like showcase his ability as a receiver. His first year at North Carolina, he had a crazy stat that I saw. He had a passer rating of 155.8 when targeted, which is like almost a perfect passer rating.
That's impressive.
He did that as a true freshman, which was awesome. He's not much of a blocker, but he's a heck of a receiver. Like, he put up over 500 yards last year for North Carolina and 4 touchdowns. That offense is really solid. I think they're going to use him quite a bit, and I think he's kind of my favorite for he's going to be tight end 2 in this next class. I think he has a chance to sneak into the back of the second round of the NFL draft next year, but I think for sure he could be like a good third round guy.
Yeah. I think there's a lot less question marks for Nesbitt as there is for Sanders. Like, I do think it's going to be those two guys after Bowers. They're both attached to good quarterbacks, so they should put up good. They should put up good numbers this year. The one thing with Nesbitt that I like a little bit more than Sanders, though, is there's not really another big name outside of him, right? And so there's Xavier Worthy at Texas. They have a good running back, and so there's players all across the field at Texas, and so I just think there's going to be more opportunity for Nesbitt than there is going to be Sanders.
That's the thing that I forgot to mention. That so Joshua Downs was the guy that was taking all the targets at North Carolina. Well, he's gone now, so I think that it's wide open for Nesbitt to take that next step, and I'm really excited to see what he does.
So, like, I think Nesbitt's going to be more of your guy that's will really translate super well to the next level. I think Tavion is still a project, right? But that guy's huge, and I just think if he could get his blocking together, he could be pretty good.
We've seen over the years that NFL GMs covet that kind of size into that raw, like, athletic freak kind of deals, and so someone will take a shot on him.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got for you tonight. Hopefully you like this kind of content. The idea here is that we'll kind of come back with more names, and then throughout the college football season where we can kind of give you updates on how these guys are doing, so you can kind of see how the draft class is looking to shake up. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel. Tune in Tuesday nights to watch Dynasty Theory, and Wednesday nights to watch Ron's reactions, so you can get more of our Dynasty content. And thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace out.